Hi, this is Steve with Decware. Someone wanted to hear the backstory behind the Sarah 300B amplifier, so I thought I would give you the short version here. As with many of our amplifiers, I did a real-time diary of the design in our online support forums. It lasts for several months, but if you want to find out how I design an amplifier, those would be the threads to read. I'll leave a link in the comments for anyone who wants a deeper dive into this. Back when the original Zen Triode amplifier was developed, there was a lot of pride in the fact that most felt it sounded better than many 300B amplifiers at the time, myself included. It was more transparent and faster and often had tighter bass and less distortion. For most of our history, I have taken the position that our 2-watt amps sounded as good or better than 300B amps, and it was confirmed by many audiophiles who had both. So you might ask, why design one then? And the answer is I had a spontaneous reaction to the war in Russia when our entire tube supply was threatened. For 25 years I have made amplifiers in the USA with USA parts and labor, but am forced to buy tubes from Russia, China, or Yugoslavia. It frankly really pisses me off that we can't make tubes in the USA without spending $100 million on government regulations. And I found out that Western Electric was purchased and retooled to make their 300B tubes and hope to offer other popular tubes like 12X7s and other popular tubes that our amplifiers use. To me, this would have been a dream, to ship our amplifiers with all US-made vacuum tubes. So I decided the best way to help that happen would be to give Western Electric some support and help them sell tubes. For me, that meant design a 300B amplifier and partner with Western Electric to discount the tubes to our customers. So that's happened. The first objective I had with a 300B amplifier design was to make it sound as close to our 2-watt amp as possible. Historically, 300B amplifiers are a little warm and rich, which is a breath of fresh air to a mid-fi digital source as it glues the dots together and makes for a better playback experience. The thrill wears off with better sources, whereas a more neutral amplifier tends to have more staying power over time. I like the high speed, neutrality, and transparency of our 2-watt amplifier and would prefer it to sound like that. Keep in mind that the design just prior to the Sarah was our SE84 UFO 25, the 25 anniversary Zen Triode amplifier, which is a story by itself. Nevertheless, to make something that even gets close to that would be a monumental accomplishment. Again, I will put the link to this design log as well, where it was recorded in real time as it happened. I decided I wanted it old school, cathode bias, AC tube heaters, and something better than the typical hum balance pot that you see in so many AC heated triode amplifiers. That's all I knew going into it. I have done a fair amount of listening to heater supplies, AC, DC, and a mixture of both, such as can be found in our CSP3 preamplifier. For amplifiers, I tend to like the sound of AC. AC is how it was done back in the day when 300B tubes ran our phone system, and if you research it, you'll find the tube itself prefers AC over DC. Most 300B amps I've noticed are using DC on the heaters. I can only assume because they are afraid of trace amounts of hum or have convinced themselves that it sounds better. Anyway, I would design the amp with AC heaters throughout. The bias was another important factor. I'm not after power, I want the best sound. And in my experience, that comes from a cathode resistor versus a fixed bias that eliminates the resistor and instead puts a negative DC voltage on the grid. If you let the tube bias itself through the resistor, it can never be wrong. Whereas a negative DC bias circuit, if set wrong or if it fails, will destroy the tube and possibly the amplifier. I may have mentioned that the output tubes are $1,700 a pair. Despite having more power, a negative grid bias setup, even when done well, never seems to sound as good as a cathode resistor. I found a way to bias the 300B using the transformer center taps for the AC heaters so no current flows through the hum balance pot. This is not a common approach, and I feel one of the bigger reasons why this amp sounds so good. It uses the same Decware UFO output transformers that we put in our SEF34i6 amplifier. So the rest was about designing a great input and driver stage. During that process, which is well covered in the design log, I confirmed what I have known for years, that it is possible to make any output tube sound nearly any way you want it to. It's not the tube, it's the driver and input stage that does the voicing. I had that amp sounding like so many different things it would be unrecognizable. A new Western Electric 300B tube has no sound of its own. You make it sound how you want it to sound. The exception is running it into distortion. Many amps will pull the power rating at 10% harmonic distortion. I rated this one at 4 to 6 watts with no more than 3% distortion. So at the average listening level, the distortion is too low to really be detectable. I mentioned how wildly different the amp can sound with different driver circuits and input stages. I ended up using a 6N6P to drive the 300B, but kept it compatible with a 6922 so that either can be used. It is configured as a totem pole to get the needed voltage swing. I chose to drive them both with a single 12AU7 input tube. With an input driver stage consisting of 3 tubes, each one set up with its own tube voltage regulator, and those regulator tubes are interchangeable from an OC2 to an OA2, letting you choose from 7 possible voltage drops for each tube. This takes each signal tube and makes it sound up to 7 different ways. Nice when you spend big money on a premium input tube because it's like getting 7 variations of it and they all sound different. More importantly is the way these regulators are used in series with the load instead of shunts to ground. This approach is used in all Decware amps that have voltage regulation. It has many benefits in how it cleans the power without injecting any noise or artifacts. In fact, it's like having a battery supply but with more speed. Each one of these is located inches away from the tubes that use it, so no additional losses or noise from long wires or traces get into the tube. This is why so few amplifiers can match the liquidity of a Decware amp like this. There are no circuit boards in the amplifier except a tiny passive filter used on the voicing switch. The voicing switch was developed to control your soundstage. Based on the time alignment or lack thereof of your speakers, the switch allows you to push the stage deeper or bring it more forward. Vibration control is a big industry, and we built this amp on a 4 millimeters thick steel plate sunken into a solid African Padauk hardwood base that is over 40 millimeters thick. This high mass approach makes it possible to drain vibration from the amp producing feedback into the tubes. If you want to know the complete story, you can find it in our support forums and the link provided in the comments of this video. There are lots of pictures of it there. In fact, the original prototype is behind me on top of the rack. I still listen to it at least weekly because I have it dedicated to my vinyl rig, and our employees and local audiophiles get together on Tuesday evenings for the express purpose of listening to vinyl. Have a great day and happy listening.